Hi guys, this is Richard from Forsyth here. We're going to do a video about some snares, but before I get going, as always, I'm going to need some help from my buddy Daryl.
Hey man, hey, do you want to tell me what this is all about?
Yeah, the emergency base button died, so I had to set a Daryl trap.
Ooh. I'm a Daryl. Well, hello, Mr. Cupcake. The second one got me.
The snare drum is the most dynamic part of the drum set, and I believe it's the most important part of the drum set. It's the first thing people lock onto, the first thing they hear whenever you're playing a rhythm. And whenever you listen to an album, you can always tell if the feeling of it kind of touches you if there's a good driving snare beat, and that's why I think they're so important. So this whole series, we're going to be talking about the importance of snare and the creative things you can do with snare. This first video is just going to be about comparing the sounds of different snares. So as you see, we've got this collection here. I'd like to thank Ryan Coots for lending us the Pearl Firecracker, the Sonar stock snare, and the badass Morgan Rose down at the bottom. So I think the first one up we're going to talk about is the Pearl Protone, which Daryl bought me, I think, for my birthday.
Yes, I believe a couple years ago, maybe?
Yeah, a couple years ago. And that's this guy down here.
Yeah, I like it. It's got a good tone to it. Pops a little more. Not necessarily one of my favorites, but I'm gonna be honest with you, definitely a number 2 contender for me.
I think that's about where I'm at too. I think it cuts through the mix well, especially if you take the time to tune it, and I've used it on several recordings. Next up, we're going to talk about the Tama Star Classic over here, which is what this guy is. This belongs to our drummer Ryan Thompson, who actually drums for Gravity Reversing. I think it's a really good live snare, and it's really well built. As far as recording goes, it's kind of pingy.
Yeah, I mean, you are right. It weighs about as much as, you know, a Geo Metro, but it does have a lot of ping to it. It was really hard to really control that little bing bing noise that you're going to hear. Live, you definitely really can't tell too much, but when it's on recording, it definitely brings out that ring to it.
Alright, the next one we have a stock Sonar snare, and this guy is probably my least favorite just because it's very dull and floppy. We tried several different tunings, we tried different tunings on all these, but to me it just kind of sounded bleh, you know, it didn't really cut. And I mean, I could see it as a good first snare, but it didn't really do the trick for me.
I feel about the same way. It definitely, even though it looks awesome and it just looks like something you would see on a Rockstar's, you know, drum set. I just felt it was just too wild. It wasn't out there. You couldn't really control what sound you wanted, and what sound you did get, it was kind of floppy as well. It just had that bleh noise to it. Some people can barely tell, but honestly, when you're recording it, you can hear it. It just sounds like it's basically tight paper on a drum.
I will say this one, it's the only one we use that has the stock head on it. It actually, and you know, stock heads, the one plies, are not really meant to be super durable or have a really good robust sound, and so it's mostly the fault of the head. We actually taped some washers in with a little bit of electrical tape to help control the sound because, you know, I don't have any moon gel around. All right, next up we have the Tama, I believe it's the Tama Piccolo Imperial Star? I don't know, it's a Thomas something. This little guy down here really cuts through the mix. Surprising amount of bottom end for a piccolo. I don't know that I would use it live too much, but it's fun to record with.
Yeah, I fully agree on that. I think it cuts through the mix. It amazingly has some good bottom end. I was expecting that to be the highest pitch, worst one we were going to have, but amazingly, you put a little tape on there, control that ring, and it actually sounded really decent. I would say probably a definite third.
I'm probably about there too, third.
Yeah.
Now, my favorite sound probably was this Pearl Piccolo firecracker up here. So it's a 5x10. That thing really makes a cool sound and not really going to be in the center of your rock mix, but I think if you're doing funk or you're doing some kind of something just kind of more a little bit out there music, I think this is a really cool snare to have. Really a fun accent piece.
Yeah, as I put it to him, I think it's more, just like he says, just if you want to put it to simple terms, like a 311 snare, where it doesn't really need to have all that sustain and everything, it just pops. And you can just hear it pop. It's kind of just a reggae kind of feel sound. It's a really nice sounding small snare. I was really surprised about that one. I was expecting that one to have too much bass and not enough highs and the ringing and what he normally wants. But it doesn't have a lot of sustain, but it definitely has that thwop. That's pretty funny.
Got a nice wood block almost smack.
Yeah.
My favorite snare of all these is not, I guess not surprisingly, the Morgan Rose signature down here. That thing really sits well in the center of a mix. We did kind of the most basic of the basic tests for this first video. This was just a comparison, single stroke, 10 hit test. So that's all you're going to get in this episode, to get like a comparison of each one of these guys. But this Morgan Rose down here, in the next coming episode, we're going to be doing it in the mix, and you'll definitely hear a difference. I think almost if you listen to it within a mix, you get a better feel for the snare of the drum, the way the snare sounds, than you do just by itself. It's almost like you can really never tell how a snare is going to sit in a mix listening to it by itself. You have to get everything in there and see how it bleeds through the overheads and mix it all together. And this guy just really cuts and pops when you're recording a rock mix with it.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, there's really nothing I can really add to it. I would say it's number one too, because out of all 6 of these, that's the only one that basically gave you a little bit of everything that you wanted. The sustain, the pop, the thwop, all that good stuff. It just gave it to you. Honestly, Ryan Coots, we appreciate all the drums, but that one may not be coming back. It may mysteriously fall out of the back of his van. But I appreciate the donation. Yeah, it's definitely number one. Definitely number one.
It's also got super wide snare wires on the back, which I think attributes a little bit more to the crack noise. So really, what we kind of learned just this side-by-side comparison, in the drum world, when it comes to snares, the importance of a snare, you really kind of do get what you pay for. Now, this is a relatively cheap snare as far as snares go. The Protone, I forgot, you can't see me. The Protone over here. But it's a really well built snare, and it actually sounds good. And with a little bit of tweaking, a little extra time, and a good head on it, it sounds really good in a rock mix. That's my primary drum to record with anything I do if the Morgan Rose signature is not in the house. But since it is, that's going to be my default until I have to give it back. But I really think that if you're going to spend money on a good kit, the best upgrade you can do, just go and buy a good snare. Buy a good snare, get a good kick head, and then everything else can fall into place over time. Whenever you go to record, put new heads on your toms, and a good engineer can make crappy toms sound bigger than they are and sound better. But that snare sound really comes from the snare and the mic placement, so you can't really skimp on that. If you use a cheaper snare, you're going to hear it. But if you use a more kind of medium snare and you tweak it up well, it's going to sound good. And if you spend a little bit extra money, really shop around and do some comparisons, you can get, without breaking a whole, breaking the whole bank, you can get a really good snare and a really good sound. So ultimately, spend a little more money on your snare and take some time with it, and you'll be happy with the results.
Mm-hmm.